All right, so part 11 is today. And so let's welcome all, and let's begin with the opening prayer. In the silence before time began, in the quiet of the womb, in the stillness of early morning is your beauty. At the heart of all creation, at the birth of every creature, at the center of every moment is your splendor. Rekindle in us the sparks of your beauty, that we may be part of the splendor of this moment. Rekindle in us the sparks of your beauty, that we may be part of the blazing splendor that burns from the heart of this moment. Amen. So as I've said before, sort of parts 9, 10, and 11 go together. And there is overlap between the two parts, between the three parts. We didn't cover everything last week, so I want to get to that this week. We were talking about what view of the end time is wrapped into this Christian nationalism. And we've, part 9 sort of traced views of end times, and there's part 9 has a sort of a little term chart, but the shift sort of was after the Puritans was what was probably you could call historic premillennialism. Then we went into a long period of postmillennialism. And then what emerged probably in the early 70s sort of took hold and is with us today is this dispensational premillennialism. And so if you look near the top of the sheet, today's handout, part 11, I replicated from last week a timeline summary for dispensational premillennialism, and take the plus signs as if you were to stretch this thing out horizontally. Okay, so each of them are like a different piece. So the church age, that's what the dispensational premillennialists say we're in. And then there's going to be the secret return of Christ, the rapture. Then the 7-year tribulation. Then the battle of Armageddon. Then the visible return of Christ and the sheep-goats judgment. Then 1,000 years, a literal 1,000 years, known as the millennium. Then Satan's little season, the resurrection of the unjust, the unbelieving dead, and white throne judgment, and the new heavens and new earth. And as we discussed last week, each of these pieces have scriptural references to them. I didn't list to talk about this. I would have to do a whole series on it, okay? But there are scriptural references to all of these, I'll call them phases, okay? I just didn't put them down. I was keying in on the 1,000-year millennium is what they get the 1,000 years out of Revelation 20, and the secret rapture comes out of 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, and that is in part 10. But I'm just doing this so you have a general idea of how this is all put together. And just be aware that, and I mentioned this, and I think it was either part 9 or part 10, this group likes to take the Bible and treat it like a jigsaw puzzle and just think you had a big jigsaw puzzle and they had all these pieces out there, and they like to put it together and come up with a system. I'm being simplistic, but that's a good way to visualize it. And so you're getting Bible verses, Bible references tied into all these pieces, and there's even references to Daniel in the Old Testament. Of course, Daniel and Revelation are known as the apocalyptic books. And what we didn't get to last week was the last piece, and I put that on. I'm starting with that today. Integral to dispensational premillennialism is the theological necessity of Israel's prominence. Israel's prominence. Dispensationalism should be dispensational premillennialism. Views the modern state of Israel, established in 1948, as fulfilling biblical prophecy and marking the beginning of the end times. This outlook also specifically argues that Christ will return only after a period of severe tribulation, culminating in an Armageddon-like final battle centered in Israel. Thus, Israel's geopolitical success and security are seen as necessary preconditions for Christ's return. Israel must rise to a prominent and powerful place among the nations as part of God's divine plan prior to the second coming of Christ. Under dispensational premillennialism, all good Christians support the state of Israel because that is what will bring Christ back. Conflating the biblical Israel, a historical religious community with whom God makes specific covenants, with the modern state of Israel is a theological error. Modern Israel emerged from 20th century contextual realities, particularly the aftermath of the Holocaust. Just because they share a name does not mean they have the same biblical significance. Biblically speaking, Israel was intended as a light to the nations, modeling justice and righteousness, as Isaiah talks about in chapter 49. Today, the church shares this commission meant to demonstrate compassion, justice, and peace. Matthew chapter 5, the Sermon on the Mount. As Jamar Tisby notes, when dispensational premillennialism theology directly informs foreign policy without critical reflection or moral accountability, it creates not only geopolitical dangers, but theological distortions. And all you need to do is read comments made from Pete Hegseth and Mike Huckabee about the nation of Israel and its significance today, and what that means for the return of Christ. And there are direct statements out there about how they think that supporting the nation of Israel, in spite of all the nation of Israel the nation of Israel's government is doing in Gaza and the West Bank, that supporting the nation of Israel will hasten the final return of Christ. And you can go and look. They're not ashamed to talk about it that way. And so if you...
That's what informs our foreign...
Yes, right. So if you look at, for this, on the reverse side for this week. I got a little bold here, but for reflection, I ask, how should Christians today approach U.S. foreign policy toward Israel, especially when military action is justified through theological beliefs about the end times?
So Israel can invade Gaza and destroy the poor people there, but they're justified in it because of this paragraph. This is the way it's going to play out. This is the way it's supposed to play out. Therefore, go Israel.
Basically, yes.
Are there two different things? I mean, this pro-Israel movement or whatever seems to contradict, like that article we had last time about neo-Nazism, which certainly is not pro-Israel. Are both of those part of the movement in a way?
Yeah, part of it's there. Remember, I call it Unraveling the Strands.
So
there's strands. Yes, they're different strands, but they all find a home that they feel, should I say, comfortable in? But just, just look at the statements made by some of our government officials with this. And Pete Hegseth he does not hide how he thinks it's going to play out with Israel, how it should be. And I see some shocked faces this morning, but this is out there, and is driving the support for Israel, the government. I'm just going to say the government of Israel, no matter what they're doing in Gaza or the West Bank.
Was this part of the pro-Zionism movement of 75 years ago?
Yes, but it's
with the Christian support of Zionism.
Right, and now there are people calling themselves, before it was just Zionism, the establishment of the state of Israel, the modern state. Now there are groups calling themselves Christian Zionists. And in fact, one of them that advertises on some of the radio stations that they're helping Jewish, older people that are suffering. But that organization, and I'm not saying they're not helping these folks, okay? But that organization is a Christian Zionist organization that literally supports the government of Israel and believes that by supporting the government of Israel, Christ will return.
And just you talk about the bad idea of being led by theological principles on these kind of things. It's true, but a couple of confusions we actually get, like on the Nazi versus support of Israel. Most of those people, they support the state of Israel. They do not support you. They're the same people, Jews. The same people who will say that there's an international conspiracy and that America is being destroyed by Jews. So we need not to confuse support of Israel with support of the Jewish people. They're two different things. And the other thing, just to be a little bit fair, there are plenty of people who support Israel for the historical reasons you talk about. Exactly. And a lot of the political support in America for Israel does come from the idea that, you're seeing a guilt complex. We kept refugee Jews out of the country during World War II. You know, the West has a lot to answer for more broadly. But it is that thing that, you know, seeing everything as just this straight line. I mean, like, all support of Israel in the United States, a lot of it, I agree, is mistaken. Some of it because of this, some of it just because it was hard to see the previous administration as being in line with this thinking. But they were no less support. You know, Israel can do whatever they want. I'm just
and I agree. You make a valid point, because there's always been support for Israel in this country for various reasons.
exactly.
And I guess so. Thank you for bringing that out. But what I'm pointing out today is, if you read statements by some of our government officials, it's driven by this view that supporting the state of Israel will hasten the return of Jesus Christ.
And it's not necessarily supporting Jewish people.
Right. Betty, and then Jeannie.
It seems to me that there are two separate things here. The biblical land of Israel in biblical times was geographically very different from the state of Israel that we're looking at today. So the land is a whole different part of the complex of what you're talking about. And the second thing is 98% of the world's Jews live in Israel or the United States. The other 2% are scattered in Europe. And so the component of the Jewish population in the U.S. is second only to the Jewish population in Israel, while Israel also has Arabs and they have Christians.
Yes.
But when the state was created after World War II, it became the homeland of the Jewish people. So the Jewish people in the U.S. support the land. They don't necessarily get into the politics of it, but Israel is their homeland. I mean, that is their homeland, geographically.
Right, and I understand that, but what I'm saying...
And historically.
But what I'm saying is, today, we have government...
Right,
fish.
but that's different from what I'm
It is different, but that's what's has
I
emerged.
I understand.
And it's a complex issue.
No question.
It is a complex issue.
My thought was, how egotistical can you be to try to force the hand of God?
Well, all I can say is look at who's making the statements. Publicly. Yeah. So.
Well, and the fact that we've got this disconnect, between some of these ideas like the Nazism versus the pro-Israel kind of thing, or the anti-Semitism and the pro-Israel. First of all, logical consistency isn't necessary. We've all found that out before. But I wonder if there's part of that disconnect is like when they were trying to resettle the freed slaves into Liberia. Let's just take all the Jews. Yes, the Jews deserve something, but let's just put them all over there so that they're not here anymore.
The one other thing I wanted to touch on this morning was, and I mentioned it last week in part 10, is during the 7-year tribulation, you'll hear of the Antichrist arising. So according to dispensational premillennialism, a world leader known as the Antichrist in 1 John chapter 2, the man of lawlessness, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, and the beast, Revelation chapter 13, is expected to arise and form a single world government during the 7-year tribulation. The term Antichrist, including one plural form, is found only 4 times in the New Testament, solely in the 1st and 2nd epistles of John. And yet the Antichrist plays a prominent role in this theological interpretation, especially during the period known as the 7-year tribulation. Historically, there has always been a fascination with the concept of Antichrist. Historically. Throughout history, the term Antichrist is often used as an archetype, a symbol which speaks universally to all humans. In the case of the Antichrist, it is a way of talking about evil, a person or persons who preach the opposite message of that of Christ. The following are some possible meanings of the Antichrist. That as Jesus represented the Christ, so others can represent the opposite at different times in history. As Jesus taught love and forgiveness, others teach hate and revenge. As Jesus represented the good and the sacred, others stand for the bad and for evil. As Jesus represented joy and peace, others can bring darkness, strife, and war. As Jesus represented justice and compassion, others can represent injustice and chaos, greed and envy. And so there are various interpretations, and there have been various interpretations throughout history about what do we mean when we say the Antichrist. And the reason I bring it up is because in the news there are some who are identifying Trump and the MAGA movement as the Antichrist. And then you might have heard of Peter Thiel, the big investor in Silicon Valley, who really was catapulted J.D. Vance to the vice presidency. He's thrown around the term Antichrist and has warned that Armageddon will be ushered in by a charismatic Antichrist figure who cultivates a fear of existential threats such as climate change, AI, artificial intelligence, and nuclear war in order to bring about a one world order. So I'm just saying that term is being thrown around, okay, out there. And I conclude all this by saying it is important to use the term Antichrist carefully and responsibly.
I've got a question. You say that people have used that term for ages. Is there any people in particular who that was referred to as?
Yeah, right. Good question. In our history, with Native Americans were the Antichrists.
They were?
Yes. The Freemasons were at one time called the Antichrists.
You know, Hitler was called the Antichrist.
Who's that?
Hitler was
Hitler,
called.
yeah. But I mean, it's not just, it's been used historically not just for an individual. The Protestant reformers called the papacy the Antichrist. So it's often used for a group or
opposition group.
An opposition group, yeah.
And sort of metaphorically or poetically too. I mean,
Yes.
it's lived a lot.
Oh, yeah. It has that term has a long history.
Did you know a book was written one time that Ronald Reagan was the Antichrist?
Oh, my word.
I wouldn't doubt it.
His three names equaled 666.
Oh, okay.
And that's how they derived it.
Yeah, the mark, again, that goes back to the mark of the beast in Revelation. And I think that chapter concludes, and it's name, or it shall be known as, or bear the image of 666.
Yeah.
But so again, to look at Antichrist, I mean, that's a study in itself.
Yeah.
And historically, but people have always been fascinated by it. But it plays prominently in this type of theology where during that 7-year period of tribulation, the Antichrist,
And you have to get the mark of the beast.
the mark of the beast, right? At one time, you may remember the mark of the, there was, remember the European Union? Yeah, that would be
One world government.
one world government, and would give you the mark of, you would have the mark of the beast, and they would be inserting chips into you.
Well, like COVID, huh?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
so I mean, as Terry pointed out, people's imaginations run wild with this. So, like I said, you have to just use it carefully and responsibly, and
We laugh to a certain extent, but we do have to take these people seriously because they believe it.
And
They
they
believe
make policy.
And it's that policy.
yes, they're quite, as was pointed out, they're very intent with this, and also, this isn't to put down any of those folks that grew up on the C.I. Scofield Reference Bible, or to them that was always the way it was, and the way it would be. But today there are folks that just are intent with driving this agenda. So as our time is fleeting, let's use the closing prayer, the prayer of blessing. That in the elements of earth, sea, and sky, we may see your beauty. That in wild winds, bird song, and silence, we may hear your beauty. That in the body of another and the intermingling of relationships, we may touch your beauty. That in the moisture of the earth and its flowering and fruiting, we may smell your beauty. That in the flowing waters of springs and streams, we may taste your beauty. These things we look for this day, O God. These things we look for. May the light of God illumine the heart of my soul. May the flame of Christ kindle me to love. And may the fire of the Spirit free me to live this day, tonight, and forever. Amen. So thank you, folks. Next week will be our last session.
What will the topic be next week?
I don't know.
Oh,
Oh, next week? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant next time. No. Next week, replacing Christian nationalism.
Sounds good. Are you going to leave us with some hope, Joe?
Was that?
Are you going to leave us with some hope next week?
Well, I think the hope that we have is that that Christ is above all this.
Like you said, he's not on their schedule.
I need a little more confidence.
All right,
Come on down here, make it more confident.
I'll work on that.